So let's call her Cathy, though Cathy is not her real name. I was supposed to wed Cathy in 4 days' time, and I was not going to be her first husband. Cathy had been married before. Rumors had it that the marriage had lasted 3 years, I think so. So I know at this point you're asking yourself that was she widowed? No. Had she divorced her husband? No. So this story of mine dates back to 2012. Cathy's first husband had disappeared mysteriously without a trace. So I heard that Cathy's first husband was one celebrated medical doctor. He was famed in Nanyuki, where they used to live, as an expert in general psychiatry and also a very, very big advocate for community health in that particular region back in Nanyuki. So rumors had it that this guy, Cathy's first husband, had disappeared mysteriously without a trace, and his disappearance had really affected Cathy. So they had looked for him literally everywhere. Hospitals, mortuaries, newspaper alerts, nothing. The guy had just disappeared without a trace. So at this point, the disappearance of this gentleman had really affected Cathy, who was now my fiancée, and our wedding 4 days. So she had been really affected because then Cathy had loved this guy, and his disappearance without a trace had really sunk her down to the lowest levels of depression. People also say he had a little drinking problem, but that would not surmount to his going away. So, having noted that Cathy really loved this guy, I'm told their marriage was the perfect, ideal marriage in the 21st century, and literally their marriage had offered her a blissful heaven here on earth, and she looked forward to spending forever with him and raising a young, beautiful family, enjoying the prospects that had come with marriage. So definitely, if such a thing would happen to you as a lady, somebody you wished and hoped to spend the rest of your life with disappears without a trace, definitely you can really get disoriented psychosocially and your entire well-being. So that's what happened to my fiancée, Cathy. So after, searching everywhere and getting no trace of her first husband, and even attempting to take her own life, suicide, twice, and of course ending up with very bad wounds, Cathy was at that point in her life where she was torn between, moving on or waiting a little bit longer for him. Maybe in the fullness of time and the grand scheme of things, the guy would come back to her. But the way she waited the first year, the second year, the third year, she was like, no, I have to pick up the pieces and move on, because who knows, maybe the guy had died, who knows, because then for a grown-up man to, get lost like that, it was time for Cathy to move on. That is when she made a decision to relocate from Nanyuki, where she was settled, to Limuru, now where we met, because then my parents and I were living somewhere within Limuru. So I met Cathy at a restaurant one afternoon. I had just come from work. I was a records keeper at a real estate company within Limuru town, and I had passed by a local joint, to grab some little lunch for myself before I would go home. So when I walked in, that particular restaurant was packed to capacity, and I saw her walk in, I think 10 minutes after I had settled on my table, and she skimmed around. All the tables within that restaurant were actually packed So she walked to where I was, because then there were the 2 extra chairs. I was the only person on that table, and she asked if she would join me. And I said, why not? I mean, decency and courtesy. So I asked her to join me. The gentleman that I tried to be, I pulled a chair for her, and we settled and began having some silly chit chat. So we spoke about general things, whether we spoke about sports, we spoke about the Kenyan economy, the dollar performance and all that. She was easy to speak to. She was open-minded. She had a very easy smile, and god damn, this lady was beautiful. This lady was cute. This lady was dolled up. I think what was really crowning her beauty was the personality, the calm personality that she had, and her knowledge about this and that, and she would occasionally throw some laughs there that were really mind-boggling. So I was like, wow, man, this is the kind of person I should be having this kind of conversations daily. So we exchanged numbers, and we said that if she could get time off her work, because also she was trying to settle into her career, her new hometown, our hometown in Limuru, and all that. So she needs somebody, of course, to definitely show her around, and just a new friend within that Limuru setup. I had Mother Nature and Father Time had selected me to be her, offer her company now that she was new to that locality. So we had lunch dates once a week. We would occasionally go out and the community library around there, and once in a while we could go for there was an IMAX around Limuru town, so we would go for the movies and the dinner dates, and they became regular. And I think if at this point I admit that we were still friends, no, there was a certain level of attraction between I and Cathy for the little time we had spent around each other. I began, having feelings for her. I began wanting to spend more time with her, and I only hoped that those particular feelings that were developing would be mutual. She would also feel the same way. So one thing led to the next, and then love happened. Dr. Cupid was able to announce Limuru's newest couple in town, and to be very honest, I ended up loving Cathy so much. I fancied marriage. I fancied a family with her. I fancied a forever happy life with her, and I was ready to walk Cathy down the aisle, because when I really, it's hard to paint a picture on the personality that this lady had, but this lady was the bomb. This lady was the it for my heart and the it for my well-being. And I love the fact that our association, or our relationship, had grown from a very innocent angle of friendship, and now we were able to share into our secrets, share into our fears as people, and share into a beautiful tomorrow for the two of us. So the only problem at this particular point was that whereas she ascertained that the feelings I had for her were mutual, she felt the same way for me, and she felt that she loved me. She was not in a hurry to move into settle down and all that kind of arrangement. She asked for time, and I accepted. I was in a hurry. Maybe I was insecure, perhaps you would say that, or maybe I was young at love, but I really wanted Cathy, to walk Cathy into matrimony as soon as I can. But she had politely and decently asked for more time, so that she could settle into her career and get her a standing within the workspace, at least get her finances correct before she would commit herself into something as huge and as demanding as matrimony. So I said, yeah, why not? I would be patient because, like the old adage goes, patience pays. So, yeah, I said, love, take your time. Another red flag that I saw at this period that we began our relationship is the fact that every time I inquired about her past relationships, she would become very adamant to be open to me, and she looked pained every time I inquired about her dating life. And every time I saw that, every time I brought up that particular topic, I would see tears in her eyes. So I went slowly on that bit. Sometimes I would get so concerned, I would ask her about her, ex-boyfriends and all that. She would lie to me that, oh, the boyfriend had flown to the US and treated her silently, and she decided to move on. Things that did not make up. Though, at this point, I'd already had rumors that her husband had disappeared without a trace. Man, I didn't care. I didn't give a tit about anything, I just wanted to have this lady for myself and start a family with her. We started counting. 1 month, 3 months, 5 months. On the 7th month, Cathy came to me and told me that she was ready to start a family with me. Both. I don't think you can understand the joy that comes when somebody you truly love accepts to go into matrimony and start a family with you. I was overjoyed. I said, now indeed there's a God somewhere. There's a living God in some corner upstairs. So I rushed to my mom. I broke the news to them. I told them, yo, mom, me, I'm gonna marry soon. My girl just said yes to me. Her dream was to have a very small, decent white wedding in a church, however small it was, just so that she could, commit herself before man and before God to do this thing called marriage. And who doesn't want a church wedding? I was overjoyed. So my parents got unnecessarily excited. My mom would, talk so highly of me at the market where she used to sell second-hand household stuff. And she was so proud of me and how I was going to, she was going to be a mom-in-law, how she was going to be a grandma soon. And she was so, her head was up there, and it was all awesome seeing your mother beam with pride, That was so satisfying. As per my dad, the old man and his friends, he could not also stop speaking highly of me with his friends, while they would be having their evening something, they would speak on how I had become a man ready to, start building the foundations of his own home. So my people, you can imagine the situation that was in our home back in Limuru. I went to my bank savings, the little savings I had. I got her a very befitting engagement ring. I proposed to her and she said yes. I went to Limuru SDA Church where we used to fellowship, and I liaised with my pastors and ministers, and we agreed to put up a small wedding for the two of us. I did not have a permanent job then, because the one for storekeeping and record keeping, it was on and off depending on the scalability of that real estate that I was working on. So the mega salaries that I was getting, I would support my parents. So the little money I had left in my account, I used it to put the wedding together, because I knew that if afterwards, after the wedding, I'm settling, we would pull our resources and work so hard to raise a standard and decent family. Well, everything went on well, and then 4 days to the wedding day. I remember very well, it was on a Tuesday. The anxiety was building, the excitement was, at par, and we were trusting God to deliver the best wedding experience for us. So it's at this point that I did not mention to you guys that my beautiful, loving, and sweet Cathy had a very severe stomach problem. Her ulcers had gotten out of hand, and occasionally her tummy would really get bad. So on this particular day, she got home earlier. She was in deep pain. And having a wedding only 4 days away, there was nothing that I was going to take to chance. So I called a friend of mine who owns a hospital around Limuru town. I told him, hey, my girl needs an abrupt and severe, an abrupt checkup on her tummy. If you can recommend a CT scan to check the severity of the ulcers and recommend some medicine. Sadly for me, this friend of mine had traveled out of town, and he understood the magnitude of the situation, because then 4 days to a wedding, he told me that given Cathy's history of ulcers, she needed an immediate endoscopy to check how the wounds in her stomach were looking like. Then she would get appropriate medication. He did not want Cathy to continue taking tablets and blind medication over the counter stuff. So he told me, get a vehicle now that she's in deep pain. Nairobi CBD and Limuru is not a very long distance. Get a car, get her into that car, go to Nairobi town. There is a friend of mine there who's also a doctor, who has a very nice and elaborate endoscopy clinic, and he's a big doctor when it comes to gut issues and the tummy issues. He can give you medicine that would hold her up to after the wedding day. Then they would do further and in-depth tests and examinations on her gut. So because my dear wife was in so much pain, I had to get a car as soon as I could, then drive to Nairobi. So this friend of mine had also contacted the doctor in at Nairobi CBD that we were coming, so when we would get to his clinic, he would prioritize us, given this, again, the event we were having that particular Saturday. I got to my bank account. I had 13,000 shillings left. I withdraw 10,000 so that, fuel 3,000, and then medical consultation would eat up a little bit of that money, and the rest would use to, for the rest of the days to prepare. So I took the entire money. I think I left around 2K at my bank account. So we got a car, we fueled it. The period between Limuru town and Nairobi CBD was the longest, because then watching my Cathy in that particular pain was the most painful thing I endured as a man. But Fate was very kind to us, and after roughly an hour we were able to get to Nairobi CBD. Arrangements had been made between the other friend of mine and this doctor, and therefore when we got to his health center, we really did not take time to get to be assisted. So at this point in time, I was really praying to God to see to it that Cathy gets the correct examination as well as the correct medication, so that we could prepare adequately for the wedding that was just due on Saturday. So we basically had Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 3 days to the wedding. I had a very personal conversation with God. I asked him to go ahead of us in this wedding, because we had loved each other so much, and at this moment we do not want anything, including matters health, to really mess up this great day that we had looked forward to. Also, I'd spent a lot of my savings on this. I was left penniless on this. My parents had really worked so hard. My mom had gotten into debt to help her make this particular wedding succeed, because then she knew the desires of my heart. She knew that if there's something I'd ever really wanted to happen in a bigger and grand and a blessed way, was this particular wedding. So I really, really hoped and prayed that my beautiful, sweet Cathy gets the medication that she needed at this particular point in time. So I asked my God to go ahead of us. So there were, I think, 1 or 2 patients that were ahead of us. They were cleared off with, and our time to get in and see this particular doctor came in. At this particular time, yes, I was nervous, but I kept on whispering prayers in my heart so that my sweet Cathy gets assisted. when we got into that consultation room where that particular doctor was, and when my fiancé and wife to be Cathy saw the doctor, she let out one huge scream and she fell on her knees. So to me, I thought that, hey, maybe her tummy issue had, gotten out of hand, and maybe perhaps she needed to get into an emergency room, and the place where they handle emergency issues. But that was not the case. My girl started shouting, AD, where have you been? So she was shouting AD while looking at that particular doctor. And the doctor also seeing and recognizing Cathy, he was also, shocked. And what led was a very tight hug between the two. And my Cathy was saying, Eddie, you left me very many years ago. You disappeared without a trace. You went away from me at a time that our marriage was young. Why did you do this to me? Eddie, where have you been, my love? Why did you betray our marriage? And she was crying. That is when it dawned on me that this doctor was actually the long-lost husband of my fiancée, Cathy. And actually, I was just here reuniting two long-lost, separated lovebirds. My people, that hug was so tight. I got out of that consultation room. I fell on my knees. I spoke to God. But until this day, I don't know what exactly I told God.